people of the internet. I've been out here shooting these black powder guns pretty much all day, and I fired quite a few rounds through these, and it's to the point to where I'm noticing black powder fouling issues. Now, normally with black powder fouling, they become really noticeable in, like, say, a muzzle loader, some kind of rifle where you got to pour your powder down the barrel and then you got to ram that ball down the barrel, engrave rifling into the ball if you got yourself something that is rifled, which most of your modern muzzle loaders are going to be rifled. And doing that is quite the difficult task the more black powder fouling you get in that rifle. Typically you get about 10, maybe 15 shots, depending on your powder, depending on your situations, etc., before you end up having to clean the rifle. Otherwise, you can't ram a ball down that barrel anymore, just because the black powder fouling inside of that barrel has built up. Black powder is notorious for being a really disgusting, sticky powder, and it gunks up the firearms systems that were being used back when black powder was regularly being used by forces all around the world. That black powder fouling, that gummy, disgusting nonsense, actually I got some of it on my hands from shooting black powder today, that stuff right there, as it builds up inside of a firearm, will actually stop the firearm from working, and that's one of the reasons why self-loading firearms did not really start to exist until the advent of smokeless powder. But even with black powder fouling and whatnot, as you try to ram your rounds through that muzzle loader, you get increased difficulty of being able to do that. That's one of the reasons why something like a mini ball or a minier ball, or however that's pronounced, people always yell at me for pronunciation. I'm sorry, as long as you guys know what I'm talking about, that's good enough for me. But something like that right there, which is an undersized round that can be stuck down the barrel, and like it expands as the gunpowder explodes and pushes out a hollow concaved area at the back of the bullet to engage rifling and increase accuracy out at long distances. Something like that right there, you have less issues with black powder fouling, because it's an undersized round, so you don't have to worry about pushing through that black powder fouling in order to seek your next bullet. Well, in something like this right here, this is a trapdoor Springfield, and I have fired, I don't know, 20 rounds or so of ammunition through this thing so far today. So it's to that point to where the black powder fouling inside of it is noticeable. And where it becomes noticeable in something like this right here, you're not really gonna risk overpressure of the gun with that small of an amount. Once you start getting up into like 100 rounds or so, I'd say you should probably stop and clean your rifle, because your barrel is quite what's the word I'm looking for, fouled up at that point. But I got about 20 rounds or so through this thing, and I am firing 4570 that is loaded with 60 grains of black powder, and it is a 300 grain projectile. Whenever I started filming today and I started firing this gun, it did not have much recoil behind it. But as I shoot it more and more and more, my rounds are slowly becoming more and more powerful. So I guess if you want to increase the power of your firearm, get some black powder fouling going on inside of your barrel. But as I shoot this more and more, and the fouling inside of the barrel of my trapdoor Springfield here continues to build up and up, the pressures inside of the chamber, just the pressures inside the firearm setting off that cartridge, are increasing, because the bullet is having a more difficult time going down that barrel and exiting. And so you maintain those pressures for actually a longer period of time, and you get slightly more powerful ammunition, just because the bullet itself is having a more difficult time going down that barrel. I'm not having a difficulty loading the firearm, and I know a lot of firearms, you have some difficulty with loading it as black powder increases, or black powder fouling increases, but I am noticing significant increases in pressure of the firearm, and that definitely increases the power behind the cartridge. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on. I got a couple more rounds. This right here is kind of an excuse for me to burn them off before I head back home. There's no point in going home with live ammunition whenever you only have a handful of rounds left. But if I load this in and I fire it off, this right here is just, it's got more recoil, it's got a bigger blast, it's got more retort to it now than it did back whenever I was starting to film with this at the start of the day. And that, oh god, that 300 grain bullet out of this thing is wild. And that is a lot of blast going out of this rifle, and a lot of recoil. I know this morning it was definitely not nearly as bad as it feels right now. So I've actually got another 45-70 round. Let's send this one downrange, just because it feels like we're getting quite a lot of power out of this cartridge. I'm just kind of shooting. There's an old muffler out there. Let's see if I can't find something that'll give us a little bit more of an impressive spectacle. I see a pile of garbage right out there. You guys probably can't see the pile of garbage, but once I hit it with this 300 grain like soft lead round, you guys will see all the stuff that's right there. It's gonna go flying everywhere. Nice. Well, I hit it, but it definitely did not move around as much as I was hoping that it would. Ooh, really smell the sulfur inside that gunpowder. So I think I'm to the point to where I'm gonna stop shooting this thing, because it's 140 years old and I don't want to risk overpressuring it, especially with its age and God knows what it's seen and what it's been through and etc, etc. So that right there is definitely something I'm going to set aside. And I got one more round for this right here. This is a Steyr 8890, and this is not one that you see fired very often. It's definitely black powder style of technology, but it's chambered in 8x50. 8x50 is a cartridge that was definitely made to be smokeless powder, but the straight pull flapper locking system of the Steyr 8890, which definitely was a black powder design, is just not strong enough to be able to effectively handle that smokeless powder ammunition, especially since this rifle also is like 140 years old. I'm not going to push it, so I just shoot black powder loads to this thing. But we're having the same sort of situation with this rifle that we were having with the 4570. Just as I shoot it more and more, it feels like it's getting more and more powerful, and that's just because of the black powder fouling. So let's send this one down range. The spring on this is a little worn out. It might not fire first shot. Oh, she actually fired first shot. But yeah, it definitely feels like it's getting more and more powerful as that fouling builds up more and more. So I think it's to the point to where I'm probably going to go clean these guns. Whenever you're dealing with black powder fouling, the easiest way to get rid of it is, from what I found, just hot water. That's how I do it. Hot water, scrub it all off, and then you oil the gun to prevent rust, and that's how I clean out my black powder. If you're dealing with brass cases, like if you shoot black powder through your brass cases, clean the black powder out of your brass cases as well. Otherwise, they will tarnish. I have had my brass 4570 tarnished before. There's probably some tarnish still left on these things. Now they actually look pretty good. I threw them through a tumbler, so that got rid of a lot of that tarnish. But black powder fouling is just one of those things that you got to watch out for. And if you're shooting black powder rifles, if it's not a muzzle loader, you got to pay attention to the power of your cartridges. Eventually it'll get to the point where you're like, this feels much more powerful than it was earlier, and that means we got some fouling. So you don't want to overpressure those systems. Just pay attention to what it is that you're doing. I'm still well beyond like the verge of overpressuring my systems, but I think I am going to go ahead and call it a day and bring these in and do some scrubbing on them. So thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this.
Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.